everyone to the budget special of the Property Show. Budget 2016 has left many disappointed, some happy, but rarely anyone elated. But it's not an easy task, is it, for a government to please everyone? Let's find out from the big guns of real estate on what their verdict is on the Union Budget 2016. My guest today, Niranjan Hiranandani, CMD Hiranandani Group and President Narrateco. Mr. Hiranandani, thank you very much for joining me. Anuj Puri, Chairman and Country Head of JLL India. Anuj, pleasure to have you with us. Amar Mirani, CEO Xander Finance. Also with us, Vikas Chimakurti, Director Kotak Realty Fund. With me here in Delhi studio, Gitambar Anand, CMD ATS Infrastructure Limited. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. I think I'm going to just very quickly take a look at the big numbers. First, the big picture of what's really happened. The biggest positive from today's announcement has been the Finance Minister's announcement of fiscal prudence. I think that was the biggest one today. And its intention to stick to the 3.5% fiscal deficit target for the next year. Now, the other one, which of course has been very positively received, a positive boost to agri and rural spending, rupees 38,500 crore for MGN REGS, 2.87 lakh crore fund for the Gram Panchayats, and also a Krishi Kalyan cess of 20,000 crore first dedicated irrigation fund. The other one, which is an important one to look at, is of course a Krishi Kalyan cess at 0.5% on all taxable services. Not good for people who are consuming these services, but this one goes for the farmers. And we do know that how rural India has been extremely distressed over the last 2 years. Now let's look at the other one, which is directly related to real estate, which is of course the boost to roads and infrastructure. The total outlay has been 2,21,246. So I'm giving you the exact number as from the budget document. Outlay for roads is 97,000 crore rupees. It's actually a tad lower than last year, but the number is still looking extremely good. Ease of doing business. This one, of course, again, directly related to real estate. How much though? We'll find out. Registration of companies in one-day, one-time dispute resolution scheme. Surprising silence though on the roadmap to GST. We were hoping to hear something at least, but that hasn't happened. So let me start with the first big question. Mr. Hiranandani, what according to you amongst these big announcements was the biggest positive? The fiscal deficit?
I think, yes, I think the fiscal deficit, right. But on the real estate side, something which we were struggling very hard to. Anuj Puri was very much a partner in that struggle. We were expecting about $10 to $20 billion into real estate in terms of getting all the stressed out assets on the commercial side as well as the infrastructure, road and other things out of the way, NPAs into real estate, in infrastructure to get out of the way. They finally brought in the DDT, subject to a small tinkering on the stamp duty that needs to be done at the state level. I think in the next 18 to 24 months, you're going to see $20 billion of relief in the infrastructure and the real estate sector. Big change is going to take place of the quality of assets and quality of the companies will change completely. Plus, large infrastructure companies like L&T will start bidding for new projects. I think that's going to see a sea change in the whole thing. I wouldn't talk too much about the rest of it immediately. Let my other friends answer.
All right. I was hoping to first get a big positive on the big picture, but we've jumped to real estate. So let me just go across and ask Anuj, for real estate, I think the most exciting thing which has happened, we in our pre-budget debate, we'd almost written off any tax exemption or the dividend distribution tax that we were hoping for at the SPV level at the REITs, but that actually has happened and that was not expected. It's come as a big positive, isn't it?
Clearly, Manisha, 2/3 of the way there was no sign of real estate, and I thought this was going to be a budget where real estate was going to be skipped. And then 5 minutes, there were lots of announcements on real estate, and I would say is 3 big announcements to my mind. One, clearly, as you outlaid, the infrastructure, huge amount of money being spent, roads, airport connectivity, regional connectivity, I do believe is that will open up a lot more large parcels of land and perhaps bring in more vibrancy in some of the regions and economic development, which will then bring down the land prices and hopefully more affordable housing in those areas. The second one, as Niranjan Bhai said, is, and he's been targeting this, initiating with the government, like all of us, is to be able to bring in exemption on dividend distribution tax. It is absolutely correct. We can, just in real estate, over the next 3 to 5 years, bring between 18 to 20 billion dollars. And why it is so important is because today there is a liquidity crunch. And one of the sectors that can bring in a lot of liquidity is the commercial office space, where you have foreign institutional investors wanting to invest. Once that money comes in here, many of the developers can delever the position, pay it to the public sector banks. The public sector banks can then start utilizing that money to pay and give loans to other developers and get the cycle started. And the third one was really housing for all. As Niranjan Bhai said, is as we go into the show, perhaps we'll dwell a little bit more on housing for all.
Okay, let's come back to affordable housing a little bit later on the show. Let me come to some of the people who are likely to bring this money in. Amar, 15 to 20 billion, you think that's the kind of number we can look and hope for now that the last obstacle to REITs has been taken away?
See, I think I would really compliment the finance minister and the entire thrust of the budget on being a completely pro-development one and giving focus to the real estate sector, which has been missing for some time in the recent past. What I would emphasize on is that the entire thrust has been towards clearing out the regulatory issues around the REITs. And once this has got cleared out, basically now the ground has been laid out for far more amount of capital raising to happen in this sector for at least the topmost grade A assets in commercial real estate in the country. Looking at a overall base of about 400 million square feet, if you take grade A itself, it will be between 80 and 100 square feet, 80 to 100 million square feet. If you take a very ballpark estimate, it comes to about 18 to 20 billion dollars worth of offerings to come out in the next 2 to 4 years. And that is the kind of capital that can actually come the way of the leading developers in office commercial real estate. And that money has a effect of percolation down into overall economy across various cities, across various assets in commercial real estate, which would ultimately benefit the overall sector and the financing system.
All right. Githamba, do you see some connection here? We always say that, look, for every bit of office space which is created, there's a multiplier effect for real estate or residential housing as well. What do you think? I mean, you really believe that the change, finally the distribution tax change in REITs, which everybody was waiting for, and infrastructure REITs as well, is a big move?
Of course it is. And like everybody is saying, there's going to be a lot of flow of money into the REIT space. But let's come back to the budget as a whole.
The big picture.
The big picture.
I think jumped to real estate. Yeah, we were so excited about this big move.
We are all smiling today. All real estate people are smiling because it's the first time in so many years that real estate has got such a huge mention, and quite rightly so. So, Manisha, I think it's a budget with a vision, because if you look at the infrastructure spend, and you look at the spend on the rural sector, on the social sector, there's going to be a lot of job generation in times to come. You'll see the effect in the next 2-3 years. I think the Make in India effort is really going to get a push with the infrastructure spend and actually qualifying affordable housing as a sort of an infrastructure activity by giving an income tax exemption over there.
Complete break.
Yes, there's a mat over there. There is a mat. But you see, all these things are going to generate a lot of activity in the manufacturing space also, because we as an industry use so many items which are manufactured by our industries here. So if you look at it very holistically, in the next 2-3 years, I see a lot more jobs being generated. I see the industry, the manufacturing sector doing very well because of what has been announced today. Okay. I think it can only get better. The fiscal deficit at 3.5 is very good, but let me tell you, I think that this government is going to really be getting aggressive on spending in the next 2 years. So
you believe so?
Absolutely. They will spend much more aggressively.
It's not just allocation. There will be spends on the roads and the railways and the water carrying
and the fiscal deficit may increase just a tad bit, but that's not too bad. Because, if there is infrastructure spend, then there's bound to be an increase in the deficit.
As long as it's capital spends, I don't think anybody is worried so much, other than rating agencies who are going to probably keep a very close eye on that fiscal deficit figure, but then more than 3.5%, 3.6 is not going to be a big one. I believe we are also now joined by Mr. Irfan Razak. Mr. Razak, thank you very much. Finally, we have you. So I can see you smiling, Mr. Razak. Everybody here so far has been positive on the budget, the big picture in terms of infrastructure spending, the fiscal deficit, the rural spends. What's your take, sir?
Yeah, I believe it's quite a balanced budget. I don't think the finance minister could have done anything better than what he's done. And there is this focus on housing, which was, always our Prime Minister has been talking about housing for all. And the least that they could do is define affordable housing, the 30 square meter, 60 square meter, exempting the service tax 100% for these homes, which I have always been talking about. And I said there has to be, there has to be a discrimination. You can't have the same rate of tax even for people who can't afford homes. So it's nice. And one great thing was suddenly the announcement of REITs, we all just sat back and said, this is fantastic. It just got slipped in, because otherwise REIT was not unimplementable, and today it's suddenly open. We can implement REITs. The DDT has gone, but always when the little bit of happiness comes with a little bit of a jolt also. Dividend is taxed at the hands of the receiver at 10%, which is not a small one, it's quite a big one. But having said that, I think now REITs will be a reality in India, and there will be a lot of people getting ready now to see that they implement REITs, an Indian REIT.
All right, very quickly, now that we have brought into conversation what this budget has done for affordable housing, let me, for my viewers, just set a perspective specifically for affordable housing. This is what's come in the budget: 100% deduction for profits to developers in housing projects, project building flats up to 30 square meters in the 4 metro cities, and 60 square meters in other cities. So there are 2 parameters: 30 square meters in metros, because you can't build larger houses, land is extremely expensive, and larger in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Now the projects have to be approved during June 2016 to March 2019 and completed within these 3 years. Of course, MAT will continue to apply. There's also deduction for additional interest of 50,000 per annum for loans up to 35 lakh rupees sanctioned in 2016-17. So it's only for the next fiscal year for first-time home buyers where house cost does not exceed 50 lakhs. So this is also actually a boost for first-time home buyers, so that you get the speculators out and also ensure that it is really for homes for mid-income India. Exemption from service tax on construction of affordable houses up to 60 square meters under any scheme of the central or state government, including PPP schemes. So we were happy to see that public-private participation, because the government cannot build all these homes, and extend excise duty exemption presently available to concrete mix manufactured at site for use in construction work to ready mix concrete. So this is a little bit technical, but this will also help the entire housing sector. Okay, Vikas, haven't come to you, but now we've now taken a look at REITs, we've taken a look at the push to affordable housing and all the big 4 or 5 announcements for the economy as a whole. Sum up your first impressions of the budget and what you like and what you don't like so much.
I think the changes which have happened in REIT are welcome. It will get a lot of capital inflow into the country from various pension funds or sovereign funds. Another thing which has not been touched is the ease of capital which one can get into the country. The finance minister in his speech mentioned that they will allow potentially hybrid instruments under foreign direct investments, which would be quasi-equity or quasi-debt. One is to see the details in terms of what those instruments will give the flexibility, which is in fact improving the flexibility in terms of how we put capital to use in the country. Second, which has happened is with respect to AIF category 2, where there was a 10% withholding tax, but the government has now come with a clarification that if the source of capital is coming from geographies where under DTA the tax can be lesser than 10%, the one would get that benefit. So if we are getting capital from a lot of sovereigns or pension funds where under DTA it is practically in some situations it is 0%, those investors will get that benefit of not having to pay any withholding tax of 10% under AIF. Under FPIs, we have now been allowed to do unlisted debentures instead of having listed debentures, which means the flow of capital can be faster and less regulatory hassles. So all these things one needs to look into the details when the details come up, but these are some positive moves which allow people like us to put in capital with far greater ease into the country.
All right, I think that's the biggest positive for the real estate sector, that there's so much confidence in bringing money into the sector. Anuj Puri, just as the other now big excitement is around that fiscal deficit target, 3.5%. So now everybody is saying there is absolutely no reason why we would not see a more benign interest regime, and you could actually get your first cut in rates around March. Is that something that the industry is hoping for, and do you think that's possible?
Certainly, Manisha. If you look at it, the entire tone of the budget, I classified into really three parts. One was ease of doing business. Second was really bringing in more transparency. Third was it about partnership between center and the state, partnership with the consumers. And the fourth was decentralization. So it clearly appeared that the government is moving on those four pillars. And a lot of the statements that he made within the real estate and non-real estate were really within those pillars. And I must say is that, as he was going by, suddenly there was a big announcement of the voluntary disclosure scheme, and suddenly another big announcement on the REIT that came in. To my mind, it appeared that he was very confident where he is taking the economy. And that confidence really lies in the way that he's controlled the fiscal deficit. And for 2016 and 17, he continues to roll on with a very strict fiscal deficit. I mean, all those, if you put it into place, I would say is despite the global headwinds, I do feel that you're going to see a softening of the interest rates within this calendar year. And you're right, it may be sooner than later that we see interest cost come down, which is a big benefit to the real estate sector.
Gidambar, how confident are you that, you will see maybe another rate cut in March? I've always questioned this rate very, very closely related to the demand of housing. I mean, residential especially, people absolutely say that they would be far more confident if their EMIs would come down. How much more do you need for them to soften before this industry actually sees a revival of demand?
So actually, I definitely think we are looking at another 50 bips in March itself. But you see, the NHB had come up with a policy where they were giving an interest subvention of 3% on houses to a certain value. So we had recommended from CREDAI to the Finance Ministry that a certain amount of rebate should be given for the next 3 years to all kinds of housing, so that this actually gives an impetus or it gives a push to the people who've been waiting to buy. So I would say something like 8% would really stir the market in a big way.
It would?
It would definitely.
But we're still far away from 8%. We're at 9.5%.
Yes,
so that
Manisha,
needs
so
many multiple cuts.
What is happening is, in their exuberance to sell, many developers are offering an interest subvention. So some are offering 100% subvention, some are offering a 1% or a 2%. So if there would be some support from the government for an interest rate subvention for maybe 3 years, as the scheme says, then I'm sure developers would also from their own end give another percentage or 100 bips or something to the buyers for 3 years till the complex is complete. So, in our suggestion, we said if you give say 2% to 60 square meter houses, the developers who are making them would offer another percentage of 0.5% to the buyers, and that would make a huge difference to the decision which has been kept pending by the buyer. But having said that, I must say the FM has looked at both sides of housing supply side by incentivizing the private sector. They've realized it, like you said, that the private sector has to be an aggressive participant in getting more supply over there, and also enabling the buyer. So this is something which we've been shouting hoarse. Last year I remember I had come to a show, Niranjan was there, and we said, it seems as though a part of the speech was missing, that the finance minister started with saying that 6 crore houses are required, but how do we get there was
But
missing.
you think this time around there's a clear indication on how you would get there?
Absolutely, there is clarity, and there is a clarity of intent that this has to be done. So they have, also spelt out the kind of areas that have to be incentivized.
Which was a big industry demand. Mr. Hiranandani, are you happy with what has come in for affordable housing? Both in terms of, I mean, I just wonder about one thing, which is you're giving a person a 50,000 rupee extra exemption on interest on home loans, but only for loans up to 35 lakh rupees and a value of 50 lakh rupees. Now, my question to you is, where in at least large metros do you really see homes at that value?
There are two things really which are really seen as far as housing is concerned. I think the giving is half-heartedly. You know, I mean, they're giving through their mind and not through their hearts. Something which tells me that, look for it, for instance, in the earlier NDA government 14 years ago said affordable housing in Mumbai was 1,000, Mumbai and Delhi was 1,000 square feet. Now it has been reduced to 300 square feet. The other cities in India, it was 1,500 square feet was considered affordable housing. Today it is considered 600 square feet. That also, they put riders as far as that is concerned. Service tax on housing under construction. Okay, you're talking only about the affordable housing segment. What about the rest of the middle class which looks at larger size houses? If you have a 2-bedroom apartment and little larger tenements, if you're buying under construction, you have to pay service tax. So what has really happened is, I agree with Gitambar that where last year we felt that housing was not looked at all, this year I think they have looked at it through their heads but no heart. So what I've found is that the Babus have restricted the kind of benefit that should have come, which should have been in a much wholehearted way that has happened. Of course, REITs has done a complete win-by. In the other segments, I think we must represent to the government, Mr. Gitambar Anand through CRIDAI, to say that service tax is an unfair tax under construction and needs to go completely as far as that is concerned. And this limit of 30 square meters and 60 square meters is too small. And you're going to make these small houses for the next 5 years. It's ridiculous. We need little bigger houses. Let people not live in smallest of small houses. We need to make it little bigger now. And the objective of the Prime Minister giving affordable housing to all, you don't want to give slums to all. We need to give houses and homes to all. That is my expectations, and I think some of the things are lacking. But anyway, as Gitambar correctly said, you know, they have mentioned housing. We're damn grateful to the government for it and Mr. Jaitley for it. But we needed a little more heart to come along with the head.
I'm really surprised, Mr. Hiranandani, that a Bombay developer is actually saying that we want to be able to give larger sized homes. I mean, even literally premium homes in Bombay do not come at more than 600 square feet of carpet area. But this whole heart versus mind question, and really has it been with the mind alone or with the heart that the government's given anything to the real estate sector? We'll come back and look at that in just a moment.